A normal spring afternoon was about to become one of the darkest days in Oklahoma's history. Parents were picking up their children from school. Families were finishing work and heading home. Then a single thunderstorm began rotating over the Great Plains. Within minutes, it would produce an EF5 tornado so violent that entire neighborhoods would vanish, schools would collapse, and thousands of lives would change forever. For the people of Moore, just outside Oklahoma City, there was almost no time left. It was Monday, May 20th, 2013. From the early morning hours, meteorologists at the National Weather Service and the Storm Prediction Center warned that central Oklahoma faced an unusually high risk of violent tornadoes. Warm, humid air from the Gulf of Mexico surged northward, while cooler, drier air swept in from the west. High above the plains, powerful jet stream winds created extreme wind shear. Every ingredient needed for a destructive supercell was coming together over the Oklahoma City metropolitan area. By early afternoon, towering thunderstorms exploded across central Oklahoma. Weather radar showed one storm rapidly intensifying southwest of Newcastle. Experienced forecasters watched as a tight area of rotation developed inside the storm. They knew it had the potential to produce a large, violent tornado. At 2:40 p.m., a tornado warning was issued, urging residents to seek shelter immediately. Television meteorologists interrupted regular programming, showing the massive supercell heading directly toward densely populated communities. At approximately 2:56 p.m., the tornado touched down near Newcastle, Oklahoma. At first, it appeared as a narrow funnel reaching toward the ground, but within only a few minutes, it expanded dramatically. The storm quickly strengthened into an EF4 and then an EF5 tornado. Winds were later estimated at nearly 210 miles per hour. The funnel grew more than a mile wide as it tracked northeast toward Moore, a city of more than 55,000 people. Traffic immediately became a major problem. Thousands of residents tried to drive away after hearing the warnings. Major highways, including Interstate 35, became clogged with vehicles. Emergency officials had long advised people not to outrun tornadoes in cars, but fear pushed many onto the roads. As the supercell approached, dark clouds swallowed the afternoon sky. Giant hail smashed windshields. Rain wrapped around the tornado, making it difficult for many drivers to see the danger until it was almost upon them. By 3:06 p.m., the tornado entered Moore. The roar was deafening. Survivors later described it as hundreds of jet engines screaming at once. Entire subdivisions disappeared beneath swirling debris. Roofs were torn away in seconds. Brick homes were swept completely from their foundations. Cars weighing several thousand pounds were thrown like toys across open fields. Trees were stripped of every branch and leaf, leaving only bare trunks standing in the devastated landscape. Inside homes, families rushed into bathrooms, closets, and storm shelters. Parents covered their children with mattresses as walls began collapsing around them. Some had only seconds between hearing the warning and feeling their homes shake violently. One survivor later recalled watching every window explode inward before the roof simply vanished into the sky. Moments later, she found herself buried beneath broken lumber and insulation. Unable to move, but able to hear neighbors crying for help. The tornado continued strengthening as it tore through the heart of Moore. It reached Briarwood Elementary School, where teachers quickly moved students into interior hallways and restrooms. Staff members used their own bodies to shield children from flying debris as the building shook violently. Miraculously, despite severe structural damage, every student and staff member inside Briarwood survived because of those life-saving decisions. Just minutes later, the storm struck Plaza Towers Elementary School. More than 600 students and staff had taken shelter inside as the tornado approached. The building could not withstand the violent winds. Walls collapsed. Roof sections crashed into classrooms. Rescue workers would later describe the scene as one of the most heartbreaking they had ever witnessed. Teachers desperately protected children with their own bodies, while the tornado tore the school apart. Outside, First responders could do little except wait for the tornado to pass. Police officers, firefighters, and paramedics listened helplessly as radio reports described entire neighborhoods disappearing beneath the massive circulation. They knew hundreds of people could already be trapped beneath collapsed homes and schools. When the tornado finally moved northeast out of Moore, after approximately 40 minutes on the ground, the destruction stretched for nearly 17 miles. But for the rescuers racing into the disaster zone, the real battle was only beginning. As the tornado finally pulled away from Moore, an eerie silence settled over the city. Streets that had existed only minutes earlier were unrecognizable. Entire neighborhoods had been reduced to empty concrete slabs. Cars lay upside down in fields, hundreds of yards from where they had once been parked. Power lines sparked across shattered roads. Gas leaks hissed through the debris. Thick clouds of dust filled the air as frightened survivors began calling out for loved ones trapped beneath the wreckage. Within minutes, firefighters, police officers, paramedics, and volunteers poured into the disaster zone. Search and rescue teams worked house by house, listening for faint voices beneath collapsed buildings. Rescue dogs searched through piles of broken lumber and concrete, while helicopters circled overhead looking for survivors. At Plaza Towers Elementary School, emergency crews dug through mountains of debris with their bare hands before heavy equipment could safely enter. Every passing minute meant another life could be lost. One firefighter later remembered hearing a small voice beneath a collapsed classroom. Rescue crews carefully removed shattered wood and twisted steel until they reached a young child who had survived beneath a pocket of debris. Moments like that gave exhausted responders hope, even as they faced unimaginable loss across the city. Another survivor described climbing out from the remains of her home, carrying only a family photo album. Everything else had disappeared. She later said she couldn't even recognize her own neighborhood because every landmark had been erased. A police officer who had spent years serving Moore admitted he became lost while responding because entire streets had simply vanished. As darkness fell, emergency shelters opened across the Oklahoma City metropolitan area. Churches, schools, and community centers welcomed thousands of displaced families. Volunteers distributed food, blankets, water, and medical supplies throughout the night. Utility crews worked around the clock to restore electricity, while hospitals treated hundreds of injured residents arriving almost continuously. When officials completed their assessments, the numbers revealed the true scale of the disaster. The Moore tornado claimed 24 lives, including 7 children. More than 370 people were injured. Approximately 1,150 homes were destroyed, with thousands more damaged. Over 12,000 homes and businesses lost power. Economic losses were estimated at roughly $2 billion, making it one of the costliest tornadoes in Oklahoma history. The National Weather Service later confirmed the tornado reached EF5 intensity, the highest rating on the enhanced Fujita scale, with estimated peak winds of around 210 miles per hour. The tornado carved a path nearly 17 miles long and more than 1.3 miles wide at its maximum. Despite decades of advances in forecasting, the storm demonstrated just how devastating even accurate warnings can be when violent tornadoes strike densely populated communities. In the weeks that followed, investigators examined every stage of the disaster. Schools across Oklahoma reviewed emergency shelter procedures. Engineers strengthened recommendations for safe room construction. Building codes were updated in many areas, and communities invested more heavily in public storm shelters. Meteorologists also refined warning communication, emphasizing not only when a tornado is approaching, but also how quickly people must take shelter. Yet the greatest story was not the destruction, it was the resilience. Neighbors who had never met before spent weeks helping each other clear debris. Volunteers traveled from every corner of America to rebuild homes and support grieving families. Teachers returned to classrooms despite losing their own homes. First responders continued working long after their shifts ended, refusing to leave until every survivor had been found. If you live in tornado country, Never ignore a tornado warning. Identify your safest shelter before severe weather arrives. Keep multiple ways to receive emergency alerts, especially during the evening and overnight hours. A few minutes of preparation can make the difference between life and death when an EF5 tornado is approaching. If you enjoy uncovering the true stories behind America's greatest disasters and the extraordinary courage shown during its darkest moments, subscribe to American Disaster Files and leave a like. In our next documentary, we'll uncover another catastrophic event that forever changed American history and reveal the lessons hidden behind the headlines. The Moore tornado was more than a violent storm. It was a reminder that nature can transform an ordinary afternoon into a fight for survival without warning. But it also proved something equally powerful. Even after the strongest winds had passed, courage remained. Communities rebuilt, families found hope again, and the lessons written in the debris continue to save lives today. Because every tornado leaves behind more than broken buildings. It leaves behind stories of sacrifice, resilience, and ordinary people who chose to protect one another when it mattered most. And those stories deserve to be remembered long after the storm clouds are gone.